Welcome to the battlefield. You're watching Wrestling Reality Hub, your front row seat to WWE Mayhem. Subscribe and let's drop kick into the headlines. A hush has fallen over a family that once seemed untouchable. A dynasty whose bloodlines shaped generations of wrestling history and entertainment glory. For decades, their names symbolized strength, unity, and resilience, echoing through arenas around the world. But now that strength has been replaced by silence. What began as whispers of concern and social media speculation has turned into a very real, very human crisis. The man who once commanded stadiums, the warrior who stood unshaken through every challenge, has suddenly become something else entirely. A son, a father, a husband, a man in need of help. The family that had always seemed larger than life is now bound together by something deeply ordinary and deeply human: fear, hope, and love. When the curtain fell in the beginning, no one wanted to believe it. Missed appearances, postponed matches, and quiet social media accounts all felt like part of a storyline. The kind of dramatic pause that fuels speculation in a business built on illusion. But as days passed and silence deepened, it became clear that this was no act. There were no camera cues, no clever angles, no scripts to explain away the quiet. This was real life, unfiltered and raw, unfolding beyond the glow of spotlights. Fans, so used to the rhythm of the show, found themselves holding their breath, waiting not for the next promo, but for an update that would offer reassurance. Behind the scenes, those who knew him best had already entered a different kind of show, one without an audience, where the only thing that mattered was survival and faith. The family at the bedside. When word reached his family, there was no grand entrance, no theme music, just the quiet shuffle of relatives arriving, one after another, to a hospital room filled with prayers and memories. Uncles, cousins, siblings, children. People who had once celebrated titles and victories, now gathered for something far more sacred. There were no speeches, no performances, only whispered words and clasped hands. In that small, sterile room, the weight of legacy met the fragility of life. They took turns telling stories from his childhood, laughing through tears, remembering the mischievous boy before he became the global star. For once, it wasn't about belts or headlines. It was about love, the kind that doesn't care about fame, only about keeping someone here just a little longer. The weight of unsaid things. It soon became clear that this crisis hadn't come out of nowhere. Those closest to him had noticed subtle signs: exhaustion behind the confident smile, fatigue in his usually powerful posture. He had been pushing through pain for months, insisting he was fine, repeating the same mantra so many strong men are taught: "I'm good, I've got this." In truth, he had been carrying a load far heavier than any championship belt. He bore the weight of expectations, of legacy, of representing not just a company, but an entire lineage. His silence, once seen as stoicism, was now understood for what it was: the quiet cry of someone trying to stay strong in a world that rewards endurance but punishes vulnerability. Pride, duty, and the cost of silence. In families like his, strength is sacred. The men are taught to protect, to endure, to never show weakness. That code built warriors, but it also built walls. The same pride that made him a hero in the ring may have made it impossible to admit when he was hurting. The family, reflecting on their own traditions, began to see that heroism isn't just about power. Sometimes it's about the courage to ask for help. The lesson came at a cost, but it carried truth. That being a leader means knowing when to lean on others. And as they kept vigil by his bedside, the message rippled far beyond the hospital walls: that even the strongest among us need space to be human. The community responds. What followed was unlike anything the wrestling world had ever seen. Fans and fellow wrestlers, who had once been rivals in the ring, united in compassion. Hashtags of hope spread across social platforms, and outside arenas, people lit candles, held up signs, and sang softly in the dark. Locker rooms, once filled with banter, fell quiet as performers gathered in circles of prayer. The scripted rivalries of the show gave way to something far more profound: the reality that beneath the personas, everyone shares the same fragile humanity. Old feuds were forgotten, grudges dissolved. In those moments, it wasn't about the show or the storyline. It was about family, a global one, standing together for one of its own. Rituals of comfort and hope. As the world watched, another kind of support began to rise, one rooted in tradition and heritage. In his home villages and among extended family, elders led quiet ceremonies. Torches were lit, ancestral songs were sung, and prayers were whispered into the wind. Across oceans, families gathered in living rooms, clutching photographs and lighting candles. The rituals were both ancient and immediate, reminders that faith and memory still have power when medicine and reason seem to falter. Each act, whether a child's whispered prayer or a community's chant under the stars, became part of a larger circle of hope. It was a reminder that healing isn't only about doctors and diagnoses, it's also about love, history, and connection. Children caught in the crossfire. The most heartbreaking scenes came from those too young to understand the enormity of what was happening. Children asking where their father was, clutching stuffed toys that carried his scent, looking up at adults who had no easy answers. Family members tried to stay strong, offering small reassurances, promising that daddy's just resting. But even in their innocence, the children sensed the weight of the moment. Their laughter, though brief, brought light to an otherwise dark place, a reminder of why the family kept fighting for hope. Those small voices became symbols of everything at stake. The next generation of a dynasty praying for the man who had given them their name and their pride. Questions that will not stay quiet. As the family and fans rallied, deeper questions began to emerge. Was the price of constant performance too high? Had the relentless schedule and the culture of endurance taken their toll? These weren't accusations, they were reflections. The crisis had exposed something bigger than one man's battle. It revealed a culture that often confuses exhaustion for dedication. For an industry built on illusion, this was a wake-up call. Beneath the lights and glamour, there are human beings whose bodies and hearts can only endure so much. And perhaps the most important conversation wasn't about what went wrong, but about how to ensure that future heroes are given space to rest before they fall. A reckoning and a remembrance. Whether this story ends in recovery or in farewell, one truth is already clear. It has become a reckoning with the culture of constant strength, with the pressure to never rest, and with the illusion that heroes don't break. The legacy of this family and the man at its center will no longer be measured by championships or records, but by the compassion and awareness born from this moment. In the end, the dynasty that once seemed unshakable has been reminded of its own humanity. Yet perhaps that's what makes their legacy stronger. Not the absence of pain, but the courage to face it together. The world may have known him as a warrior, but now they know him for something greater. As a man whose struggle reminded everyone that even the strongest hearts sometimes need to be held.